welcome to Flutterbug Auto. Previously on the channel, I've discussed the original arcade Ridge Racer and Ridge Racer 64, and my personal favorite Ridge Racer is Ridge Racer 3D. But when you think about Ridge Racer, there's really only one console that comes to mind, which is, of course, the PlayStation. I grew up with not a lot of video games, and the ones I had were almost entirely handhelds, which is why my personal favorite slash most familiar Ridge Racer is the 3DS one. And I didn't have any consoles at all until I was basically an adult, and my console collecting career has been primarily Nintendo based, so the PlayStation has been a bit of a blind spot for me. But now that I'm doing this channel and talking about Ridge Racer, I've been really excited to finally check out the series in its original console home. And wow, what a time I've had playing these games. I immediately understand why these games are considered all-time classics, especially Ridge Racer Type 4, though I'll get to that one later, of course. Also, to start out, you should probably make sure you've watched my video about the original arcade Ridge Racer to get my baseline opinions on that game, because the first PlayStation Ridge Racer is just a port of that game, so my analysis is mostly going to be comparing it to the original. And compared to the original, I think this version comes out pretty favorably. It's still a very simple game, and the visuals came out the other end of the conversion a little worse for wear, as you might imagine, going from dedicated arcade hardware to a console, but it does retain the bright, colorful look and the nice little time of day lighting changes and things like that. And on top of that, we get some nice improvements, like the ability to pick from a few different cars, and the ability to change the camera angle so that I'm not driving with my nose on the ground. Unfortunately, however, we lost the guy running across the track at the start of the race. Rip to a real one. I think the only downside I really have is that the drifting doesn't feel as good as in the original, and that was one of the main things that I noticed about the arcade version, was just how amazing the handling and drifting felt. This game just isn't quite as intuitive or smooth. It's not awful, but it's just not the same. Really, being completely honest, it just has a steeper learning curve, which isn't a bad thing in and of itself, but I still preferred the older way. It was just really satisfying. But yeah, both games feature the same singular track with increasing difficulty, plus a few extra difficulty levels in this version. So I think despite preferring the drifting in the arcade version, I think overall this is the better version of the game. I just really appreciate the little extras. It just gives the game a bit more replayability, and therefore a bit of a leg up on the original for me. Neither version is a very big or complex game or anything like that, but they're both really fun and worth coming back to every once in a while. The next game is Ridge Racer Revolution. This one I have the least to say about out of the four games. In fact, I can summarize it for you in one sentence. It's the first game, but with a different track. That's literally it. And not only that, but I don't like this track nearly as much as the first games. Here we are, still stuck with only one track for the entire game, and I don't even really particularly like it that much. It's just not quite got the charm of the first game for me. I think partially that's because it doesn't really try anything new. It's got the city, the mountains, the seaside. I think if it was more radically different from the first game, I would probably like it better. As is, it just feels like they didn't do as much as they could have, you know? Maybe I'd feel better if there were new cars or something too, but as is, I don't really have anything to say. And on top of that, I also don't like the handling quite as much. As I mentioned, I felt like the drifting got a little bit messed up in the transition to console, and with this game, I feel like they fudged it even a little bit more than that, and I was vibing with it even less this time. So this one's kind of just a total bust for me. You can easily skip this one. However, the lady at the beginning of the race is wearing even less clothes this time. I suppose that might be a plus for some of you out there. With all of that said, you might expect that Ridge Racer Revolution is my least favorite, but actually that dubious honor goes to our next game, Rage Racer, because like Revolution's main sin for me was just being very samey, a bit of a boring addition to the series. While Rage Racer does change things up quite a bit, but it commits a few cardinal game design sins for me that really take away from all the positives that I otherwise have to say about it. And with that said, let's talk about those positives first. First of all, our girl Reiko is finally here. This is her first official appearance. She previously sort of half appeared in the arcade exclusive Rave Racer. Like, a character who kind of looks like her was in that one, but it's up for debate whether that's actually her or not. Like, she wasn't named yet or anything. But here she is definitely fully officially here, named and everything. And she's right out the gate with some kick-ass outfits too. She's really out here styling. Also though, the way they animated her is really jank. It's so funny because she's a flat image, but they decided to still move her legs in 3D. I have no idea what compelled them to try it like this, but I'm glad they did because it's certainly a thing to look at. This is also the first Ridge Racer to have an intro cutscene and like a story, or at least some context for what's going on, and it doesn't exactly make a lot of sense or explain very much, to be honest, but it's still fun that it's there. Adds a little bit of charm to the game. Like, it literally says that nobody has any idea where this came from. So like, okay, thanks. There's still essentially only one track in the game, but it's just like I was talking about before. It's super duper different compared to the previous entries, so I don't really mind nearly as much. It's got a totally different vibe, and I like it a lot. The scenery is really, really nice. And this game is really a peek into the future of the series. Later Ridge Racer games look and feel a lot more like this one than they do the original game. They're not nearly as bright and colorful, very muted color palettes. The texture work invokes more of a sense of realism. Even the cars feel a bit more realistic, even down to the driving. In the previous games, the laws of physics largely do not apply to your car. It kind of just goes. Sometimes you'll get airborne, and that's about it. In this game, however, you really feel those uphill segments. Your car will really noticeably slow down. In fact, I often was trying to strategize the hills and trying to keep a specific speed going into them so that I'd know that even when slowed down, I'd still be going at a decent pace. It's pretty fun. I like Ridge Racer with a little bit more weight and physics. Driving in this one feels great. I think that the drifting is still less good than in the original game, but it feels better than the first PlayStation game and better than Revolution, so I'm happy. It feels a lot more like Ridge Racer 64 at this point. I enjoyed that game quite a lot as well, so it's all good. This game also introduces customization for the first time, which I enjoyed. You can even design your own emblem for your car, which is very fun and appreciated. And also it's funny because like, this game is called Rage Racer, but this game has the absolute most chill vibes in the whole series so far. The music is so chill, the muted colors and pretty scenery lend themselves to a sense of calm. It's really nice, honestly. And like, that's a lot of praise, right? At this point, you might be confused as to why I'm setting this as my least favorite in the group. And that's because it all falls apart when it comes to progression. I've talked before about how much I dislike grinding, particularly in racing games. And oh boy, let me tell you, Rage Racer is the grand master of grinding. In the previous games, you don't really have unlockable cars. So everything is just absolute pure skill-based. You pick the car that works best for you, and you hit the road, and you'll master the game through practice eventually if you keep at it. This game, on the other hand, is all about unlocking cars, and they've done it in my absolute least favorite way, where car stats are not balanced in the slightest. Your picks are not based on personal preference or anything like that, but instead have a purely straightforward linear progression over one another. Like, each subsequent car that you get is going to more or less outclass your previous car, and this method can be fine if you progress to each car at the same rate as you reach new difficulty levels, or if the different car classes are locked to their own specific events. But this game does it in none of those ways. No, in this game, progression is locked behind currency, which you earn by placing well in the races. And most likely, at first, you won't be getting first place because your car kinda sucks. The amount you can win is going to be limited. Like, no matter how hard you try, you are not going to win those races because your car just doesn't go fast enough. The leaders are just going to outpace you, so you just have to grind until you can afford a better car and start winning, and eventually you'll move on to the next league, and then your car is now inadequate yet again, and it all repeats because guess what? The next car you need is expensive compared to the amount of money that you're now winning. You're winning more money than you did before, but the next car is like exponentially more expensive than the previous one. You are now the race car driver equivalent of Sisyphus, and not only is all of this the case, but also you have lives, and if you lose them all, you have to start the whole game over from scratch. So don't you dare even try a race unless you're sure that you can finish in a good enough position to not lose a life. You can mitigate this by just resetting the game when you're about to lose your last life. But this still makes the game into an unrelenting slog, because now you've got the added time of waiting for the game to load back in every so often. It's so completely bad. And it's just so annoying that it's gotta be like this. I would otherwise really like this game. I think it's a really nice change up to the formula and a nice, interesting aesthetic shift. But they just had to get so draconian with the progression for some reason. Ugh. I'm sure you could mitigate some of this by A, practicing a lot, and B, making only the most efficient possible choices in terms of which cars to purchase and when. But like, the first time you're playing, you're not going to have that knowledge, and you'll still have no room for mistakes thanks to the live system. So to me, really, no matter which way you cut it, it's going to suck. It's very unfortunate. Also, one other big nail in the coffin for this game that I have to bring up, and that you may have noticed in some of my footage up to this point, is that the collision in this game is absolutely god-awful. Look at how far away my car model looks to the wall that it seems to have just pinged off of. That is atrocious. The collisions were a little bit less than ideal in Ridge Racer 64 as well, but this is on an entire other level, and it's worse than any of the other PlayStation Ridge Racers. And with everything else, that was especially the thing that just ruined it for me. Like, look at this situation here, where I just grind to a complete halt on nothing for some reason. Like, what do I even say? Also, one time this happened to me for some reason. Anyway, from the worst progression I've ever experienced in a racing game, we move on to, honestly, my very favorite progression in Ridge Racer Type 4. In this game, you primarily play through a little linear story mode type of thing, with also just an absolute ton of options. You can pick from a variety of teams and car manufacturers, and whatever combination you pick, the game will feel very different, which really lends this game the most replayability out of any Ridge Racer I've played thus far. Being able to come back and have a fresh experience so many times is really neat. Also, some of the car choices even forgo the drifting mechanic entirely, which you'd think for Ridge Racer would probably take away from the game. But honestly, I actually still really had a lot of fun even with non-drift cars. Plus, the little storylines you get with the different racing teams are a really fun inclusion, and sometimes very emotional and dramatic. But like, you know, they're nothing super fancy or anything. They just add a bit of fun context to what you're up to in the game, and I really appreciated it. This is the only Ridge Racer I've played that actually has any kind of story like that at all, aside from, of course, the little blurb at the start of Ridge Racer, and it's a very welcome inclusion. Also, I haven't really commented about the UI design in any of these games previously, but I really like the user interface in this game. It's very sleek and stylish, and I like the focus on that bright, slightly orangey yellow as the game's main color. It's super duper memorable and really gives the game a unique character. But yeah, anyway, the progression. Because you have this super linear progression where you're just given a new car periodically instead of picking your own or having to buy your own, you know for sure that it's possible to win in the given scenario, as long as you've got the time and skill to make it happen. On just my second playthrough of the game, I picked the most difficult combo with Dig Team Racing, inadvertently. Like, I didn't even realize that I was going in for the most difficult combination in the game. But even so, I made it happen. And it was really fun too, because despite the difficulty, I knew that all I needed was to push myself to near perfection with my driving, and that I wasn't being held back by just needing to buy a better car or anything like that. I was the only thing in my way to victory, and nailing that perfection was really, really difficult, but it was also really rewarding, because, as I said, I knew I could do it if I just tried hard enough. That playthrough ended up being one of the most satisfying times I've ever had with a racing game as a result. Absolute top tier experience, and I probably won't do it again. But playing with that level of perfection required takes a lot out of me, but I'm so happy that I did it at least once. So already, based on that stuff alone, this is definitely my favorite, and it's definitely an all-time classic of the genre, but that's not even close to everything I loved about this game. For instance, the graphics. Like, my god, this is an absolutely gorgeous game. As I mentioned at the start of the video, I'm not the most familiar with the PlayStation, and I haven't played a ton of games on it, but so far, this is the best looking game I've played on the system by far. The art direction is phenomenal. I like that it's somewhere between the darker, grittier look of Ridge Racer and the super bright saturated look of the older games. It's nailing a realistic look, but it still has wonderfully vibrant car designs. The colors just really pop in this game. Everything about the look of the game is stunning, from the texture and model work to the lighting, and even the 2D skybox backgrounds look amazing. I never get tired of looking at this game. And we finally have more than one track, and all of them are unique and super iconic, honestly. We've got beautiful hillsides and cityscapes and wonderful set pieces like the big Pac-Man and Puka balloons or the airport. It's doing a great job of making you feel like you're part of a big racing competition, and it's just thoroughly beautiful. It really shows what the PlayStation can do. And all of this culminates in the final track where you celebrate New Year's 2000, the turn of the millennia, the fireworks going off and everything. It works so well as a big grand finale to the game. They did such a good job building up a sense of excitement and accomplishment. And also, I mentioned them briefly earlier, but I really cannot overemphasize those backgrounds, because like, even though they're very simple and low res, they set the tone so incredibly well. Look at this cityscape background on this track. It's so pretty. Or this beautiful distant hillside. I could just go on and on. Oh, and also don't let me forget the soundtrack. I think this game has my favorite so far. Every song is great, and I've been playing my favorites during the segment, so I hope you've enjoyed those. The game is a lot less janky, too. Collisions feel solid, no weird teleporting or anything. The physics feel good, and importantly, the drifting finally feels amazing again. We are finally back to the standard that was set for me by the original arcade game. I really do not think I have a single negative thing to say about Ridge Racer Type 4. Honestly. To me, this is complete and total racing perfection. Incredible vibes, incredible gameplay, and it's full of so much charm and personality, and also Namco references that I personally really enjoy. If you play any of the 90s Ridge Racer games, you've absolutely got to include this one. It is absolutely the star of the show. And now that I've covered 6 of the early games in the series, please let me know what other Ridge Racers you'd like to see me cover on the channel. I would love to cover Ridge Racer 3D, but let's just say I've had some issues with capturing it. And also, I'd like to cover the ugly duckling of the series, Ridge Racer Unbounded. So if there's anything else you'd like to hear my thoughts on, please let me know in the comments. And as for now, I will see you again soon.